Welcome back, true believers and all you merry Marvelites, to another very exciting episode of Avengers Project 101. So in case you weren't able to physically attend E3 this year in order to watch the behind closed doors gameplay of Marvel's Avengers at the Square Enix booth, or you haven't been keeping up with all the newest updates relating to the game itself, this video will fully go over and break down everything relating to the game ever since E3 2019 up to now. Now this will not only cover all of the major details that have been added on to what we know about the game from all the developers during E3 itself, but I will also fully run down everything that was shown off during the behind closed doors demo and my personal impressions after seeing the gameplay not once but twice. So before we fully dive deep into the gameplay that I personally saw at the E3 2019 behind closed doors demo, I do want to fully address the elephant in the room and state that the leaks relating to the game do not do it justice in the slightest. And if you are unaware, the gameplay has in fact been leaked for the Avengers project, showcasing the majority of the Golden Gate Bridge level that was shown off during the E3 2019 trailer for the Avengers project, but also showcasing all the gameplay for the main characters that you can play as in the base game. So because of this gameplay footage being leaked online, some people have seen it and then come to think that it isn't really up to par with the other AAA experiences that we do currently have, and also believe it to be a quote-unquote last-gen experience given the graphics that it does appear to have. So due to the fact that the leaked gameplay footage hasn't really been received all that well from the general public, I do feel it is necessary to fully address that the game is in fact in the pre-alpha stages of its development. This also means that everything that we saw within the A-Day trailer that was shown off during the Square Enix E3 2019 presentation is in fact all a pre-alpha render of the game in action. And yes, this does relate to in fact both the gameplay snippets and cutscene segments that were featured in the A-Day trailer to in fact be within the pre-alpha development cycle. Not to mention that it's also been officially confirmed by the developers themselves that the gameplay and the cutscenes as well as the character models of the Avengers will be officially polished by the time that the game releases on May 15th, 2020. But on the flip side, even though the developers did officially confirm that the game will be polished by the time it does release next year in May, they did also go to state that the main designs for the Avengers themselves will not be changed come launch. This mainly relates to the rather large amount of criticisms that people had with the overall looks for the Avengers in the game itself, with that of Captain America's more bulky looking soldier outfit as well as Thor's rather interesting design on his casual attire. So even though it looks like the main outfits that we do see the Avengers wear in the A-Day trailer are here to stay, at least you will personally have the availability to change and customize your character's looks by the time we do end up playing the game. And to break that down a bit more, which I fully believe is going to be one of the biggest highlights about Marvel's Avengers, is that every hero that you can unlock in the game can be fully customized by the player themselves. Since the Avengers project is going to be a very ambitious game where players can immerse themselves within this world for years to come, Crystal, Square, Marvel, and Eidos have made it their goal that every new hero and region that will be added to this game is 100% free. So alongside with having no loot boxes and no pay-to-win scenarios, everything that you can mainly earn within the game in order to progress through the story and upgrade your character can be unlocked by just playing the game directly. This includes players to access a thoroughly robust and expansive progression system for the Avengers project that do relate to both upgrades relating to traversal and combat. And alongside all of this, you'll also be able to unlock gear which you can equip to the specific Avenger that you are currently playing as, which does relate to both cosmetic and specific upgrades that do enhance your character's stats. And for those of you in particular who are major fans of alternate suits, just like with all the costumes that we did receive in Spider-Man PS4, there will in fact be a plethora of gear items and outfits that you will be able to unlock and access for your specific Avenger. So with the majority of all this player choice that appears to be fully implemented within the Avengers project, it does look like you as the player will be able to fully craft your own idealistic version of your favorite superhero. And even though we haven't actually seen any of these systems in place so far relating to the upgrade system / skill tree and even the customization opportunities, it does sound like there will be a lot of player choice and variety for gamers to experiment with. However, even though it is confirmed that every new hero and region added to the game will be free at no additional cost, and there will also be no play-to-win scenarios or loot boxes, it is sadly confirmed by the game's main creative director of Sean Eskai that there will in fact be microtransactions within the Avengers project. Now, even though Sean didn't specifically indicate as to what these microtransactions will relate to, I do believe that given that this title is in fact within the games as a service genre, that they will have microtransactions relating to the cosmetic items that you can unlock when playing the game. So say for example that one of the many alternate outfits that we could see for Iron Man within this game does in fact relate to the various Iron Man armors that we do see in the MCU films. Now in this instance, if people really want to go out of their way to wear this armor within the game, I could definitely see the developers putting it as a type of armor that you could unlock only only through using microtransactions. Now I understand some of you would be a bit upset about this, and even I myself am a little bit irritated within its involvement in Marvel's Avengers. I completely understand why the developers are including microtransactions within this game, since we will apparently be able to play this game for years to come, and all the future regions and heroes that will be added to it will be free with no cost. I do think a slight trade-off will be having outfits that you really do want to wear in the game can only be accessed by spending a little bit more money to try and equip that item for yourself. And even though I'm personally disinterested within the entire formula of microtransactions, I do think it is a fair trade-off, like I said earlier, within everything that we are going to receive within this game by the time it does release next year in May. Now, as for a couple more details before we fully break down the gameplay that I personally saw at E3 2019, is that there will in fact be only one character per use while you do play the game as a single player or co-op experience. So for example, there can't be a total of 4 Iron Mans flying around the game, but only one character can be in use when you do play it in co-op, and also the game will in fact have a photo mode feature down the line. So not only will a photo mode feature be incredibly awesome to use during a game like Marvel's Avengers, and definitely during all the amazing set pieces we'll be able to go through, but you can also fully experience this game either in a fully single player manner completely offline, or either on 4-player co-op while you do play it online with your friends. And even though we already have seen footage as to what Marvel's Avengers looks like in the single player form, I'm definitely curious as to what the co-op features are going to entail for this game. And even though we don't necessarily know as to how these are going to operate, it does sound like that the single player missions that you can play and the co-op missions are 2 separate experiences entirely. While the single player missions will be able to progress the story forward, the co-op missions will be able to expand your character that you are currently playing as and team up with your pals to become Earth's mightiest heroes. This also directly relates to another factoid that some people are still a bit unaware of, is that it is confirmed that this game is not open world like that of Spider-Man PS4, but does have in fact multiple hub worlds that you can explore with the regions that will be featured in this game. And within these specific hub worlds, you will be able to choose which type of missions you want to do as which specific Avenger, and either choose to go in it as a co-op or single player experience. And since these are in fact hub worlds, you will be able to explore them to your heart's content as whichever Avenger you choose to play as. So for those wondering whether or not you'll be able to fly freely around these hub worlds as Iron Man or Thor to your heart's content, the short answer to that question is yes. This also directly relates to the combat of the game, where if you are playing as a flying Avenger, you could either take out all the enemies on ground, or you could stay flying and take them out from the skies above. So with all of those details being the most concrete pieces of information that we do currently have about Marvel's Avengers, it definitely sounds like a very ambitious experience that I'm very much looking forward to play once it does release. And hopefully by the time we end up receiving more information and footage about the Avengers project, presumably at this year's San Diego Comic-Con next month in July, I'm definitely looking forward to them possibly revealing some more gameplay footage and some story details relating to Marvel's Avengers overall. But with all that said, let's finally dive deep into the behind closed doors gameplay of Marvel's Avengers in action during E3 2019. So now as we tread towards the behind closed doors gameplay demo of Marvel's Avengers, it did initially start off after this scene where Thor and Tony are flying towards the Golden Gate Bridge. Now after some witty banter between the two, they do eventually split up to take out bad guys on different parts of the bridge, and we thus begin the gameplay demo playing as Thor. And after learning the fact that one of the major combat designers for last year's Game of the Year, Vince Napoli from God of War, is confirmed to be working on the Avengers project gameplay, I can definitely tell it's going to be an amazing experience once it's fully polished by the time it releases on May 15th, 2020. This doesn't just go for Thor, but also all the other Avengers that were playable during the demo. So with Thor's combat in particular, the person who was playing as him was able to freely throw Mjolnir around wherever you actually wanted to go. This not only allowed you to freely throw it and recall it whenever you wanted to, but you could also combine it during your combat maneuvers when taking out all the bad guys on the bridge. You can also summon lightning by smashing Mjolnir on the ground to take out a group of enemies, and you can also pin enemies with Mjolnir on certain walls or cars while punching them with your own fists. But even after seeing all those combat moves, my favorite one has to be where Thor summons a bunch of mini cyclones, raising all the enemies above the ground and shooting them all with a huge lightning strike. And also during Thor's gameplay section, he also used Mjolnir to clear some debris which some characters may not be able to go through, and also save a civilian who is trapped under some rubble. And after all that godly action, we then transition to Iron Man, who was able to fly after some enemies with jetpacks. So like I mentioned earlier, you can fully and freely explore these hub worlds either as a flying or non-flying character whenever you feel like when you're not doing main missions. However, in this particular gameplay section, it's obvious that Iron Man is flying on rails to follow the specific path that the enemies are taking. But at the same time, when you are flying, you can barrel roll out of danger to try and avoid the incoming attacks, and you can also freely shoot repulsor blasts at the enemies that you are chasing. And once Tony was able to catch up with the flying foes that he was after, he then took the battle to the ground, and also a little bit to midair. Now, as you would mainly expect, the characters who can fly are going to play a bit differently from the characters who don't have that same ability. And mainly within Tony's case, he did have a lot of really cool attacks that use his repulsor blast on ground, but then you could also launch enemies in the air and fight them in midair while flying at the same time. This also transitioned really well by all the developers fully utilizing all the assets that Iron Man's armor comes equipped with. And of course, I'm mainly relating to his jet propulsors, which allow him to fly in the first place, as well as Tony utilizing some homing missiles and even his unibeam. Now, as a small detail, while Tony was actually flying after the foes that you are chasing on the Golden Gate Bridge, he does receive an incoming call from S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Maria Hill. Now, even though this hasn't been officially confirmed yet, I can easily identify her voice a mile away because of how popular she is within the video gaming industry. And hopefully, since they did choose a great actress to play this particular character, I do hope that she does have a big involvement within the game overall. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, I'm mainly referring to Jennifer Hale as Maria Hill. So knowing that this game already has a hugely star-studded cast with that of Nolan North, Troy Baker, and more, I definitely think Jennifer Hale is yet another star to add to the list. And after Iron Man's gameplay segment was all said and done, we're now arriving to what I believe to be the best character that was shown off so far, is the one and only Incredible Hulk. Now, as for Bruce Banner's case, it's pretty self-explanatory as to what you would expect from a character like the Hulk. Not only does Hulk's combat relate to a bunch of awesome smashing, but you can also pick up enemies that you are fighting and smash them into each other or throw them at the other foes. And alongside of that, Hulk also has the ability to grab rubble from the ground and then throw it at the enemies that you are currently surrounded by. However, one of the biggest highlights of Hulk's gameplay for me is when he did his awesome signature thunderclap to clear out a huge variety of enemies all at the same time. And besides having some extremely brute force combat, Hulk also apparently has some really cool traversal abilities by not only having the ability to jump far distances, but also wall jump from area to area. So with Crystal Dynamics clearly utilizing all of Hulk's main traversal abilities, I'm really curious to see how that's going to actually operate during the main hub world sections. Now, as we head towards the second to last playable character who is showcased during this gameplay demo is none other than the super soldier himself of Captain America. And just like how Hulk's gameplay is pretty obvious and straightforward for that character, the same thing can essentially be said for Steve Rogers. While the other heroes had to fight on the Golden Gate Bridge, Captain America's gameplay section did take place in the new helicarrier headquarters that the Avengers are taking place in of the Chimera. And while Cap is slowly but surely being bombarded by Taskmaster's goons, you do have the option to either fight them with your own fisticuffs or with your handy dandy shield. This can either range from doing some Batman Arkham-esque combat and some really flashy takedowns, or even using the ability to freely throw your shield wherever you want to. Not to mention that you also have the ability to launch an enemy and then quickly attack them while they are in midair. Now, mainly relating to the story purposes of this section, Cap is trying to protect whatever is on the Chimera so that way Taskmaster's goons don't get their hands on it. And also during this gameplay section, we do hear a certain scientist over the radio that Captain America is talking to, but it did say unidentified when the gameplay footage was taking place. And even though I personally can't identify who the voice actor was for this scientist or who this scientist could possibly be, I am very curious as to what their role is within the game. And in order to fully finalize this super patriotic gameplay section, Steve is then fully surrounded by a bunch of Taskmaster's goons, only to use a super shield bash move to take out everyone in his way. And finally, moving on to the last playable Avenger, which was showcased during this behind closed doors gameplay, is none other than the Russian spy herself of Black Widow. So while all the other Avengers had to take out all of the goons, we now finally get to the main boss of this gameplay demo, which is none other than Taskmaster. Not only is Taskmaster fully equipped with the signature sword and shield, but he's also wearing a crazy jetpack, which makes it even more visceral when you're playing as Black Widow. So after hitching a ride on Taskmaster's jetpack, we then get to fight him on the very top of the Golden Gate Bridge by using Black Widow's signature pistols. And after a bunch of shooting and dodging from both Black Widow and Taskmaster, we then get to take the fight to him back to ground level of the Golden Gate Bridge to settle the score once and for all. And during this final gameplay section, we do get to see a lot of Black Widow's tactical abilities in use, from her going from a dual baton wielding playstyle to also using a grappling hook to get in close and attack Taskmaster. Not to mention that there was a small sizzle reel after the main gameplay that took place where it showcased Black Widow using a giant staff with red electricity coming off of it instead of her dual batons. And as for one of the biggest highlights of the boss fight itself is where Black Widow managed to use a cloaking device in order to make herself invisible to get the drop on Taskmaster and take him out once and for all. And after all the gameplay was fully showcased for all the Avengers in action, it then finally ended and cut back to the main trailer, which was showcased during E3 2019. So a couple takeaways which I personally noticed from the gameplay demo is that there are in fact what looks like to be a total of 3 special abilities per character. This ranges from using the special moves which are labeled to the L1 and R1 buttons, as well as both L1 and R1 at the same time to fully unleash a superhero attack. This mainly relates to the giant Hulk thunderclap which I mentioned earlier, and also the giant shield bash, which you can do as Captain America. And even though you do have some standard combat and combo abilities, these special moves will in fact be usable during the gameplay and will probably recharge over time. And furthermore, as I discussed, one final point of interest which was showcased during the gameplay is that there will be sections where of course you do have to partake in quick time events. So mainly behind the behind closed doors gameplay itself, which may be adjusted by the time it releases in May of 2020, is that there was a section where Thor had to save a civilian by using a small quick time event, as well as Hulk and Black Widow having their own as well. For Hulk's case specifically, it was the certain section of the trailer where we do see Hulk grab that giant vehicle and then throw it at the other vehicle on the Golden Gate Bridge. And mainly for Black Widow, the entire time that you are riding on Taskmaster's jetpack is you trying to punch him in the face with a giant QTE event by pressing square repeatedly and also pressing triangle a few times as well. So in the end, everyone, I do believe that given the confirmation that all the gameplay that was showcased behind closed doors is confirmed to be in the pre-alpha stages of development, I have total faith that the final product that will be released on May 15, 2020 is definitely going to be an experience that most people will enjoy. And I, for one, definitely can't wait to see what comes next. And until next time, everyone, thank you all so much for watching, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comments section down below. What are your thoughts about all the info that we do currently have about the Avengers project, and if you did manage to see the leaked gameplay footage, what are your current thoughts about it? For me personally, I think everything is only going to get better and better by the time we do see more footage of it, and hopefully whatever that does turn out to be truly blows everyone's expectations out of the water. But until that time comes, everyone, thank you all so much for watching, stay merry Marvelites, and peace out.
Well, what are we waiting for?